Adaptation. Is there any better adaptation from film to movie than Lord of the Rings? You'd be hard pressed, I think, to find something comparable. Now, there are those who are a huge fan of the books, who read the books originally, and who say that the books are way better than the movies, and anyone who likes the movies are casuals, freaking gatekeepers. But I would say, as someone who started watching the movies and then decided that I loved the movies so much I should read the books, I feel like I have kind of a unique perspective on what makes Lord of the Rings good, at least from my perspective, and what makes both the books and the movies super unique in their own way. Starting with what makes an adaptation, right? How do you even translate a book like Lord of the Rings that is so long and so vast and so huge? How do you even translate that to the screen? The only way you could do it super faithfully, at least the way I look at it, and by faithfully I mean like word for word, dot for dot, letter for letter. If you're going to do something like that in film, really the only way you could do that would be like a mini series, right? There's so much in Lord of the Rings. There's so much that goes into that story in the book. Translating it to a trilogy, how do you even quantify that, right? And I think what they were able to do was very wise. What they were able to take from the books, what they were able to cut out of the books. I think I think they made wise decisions there. I'm not going to talk today about the things that they decided not to put in there, although I think that's a whole video on its own. I kind of want to just take a look at different decisions that are made in terms of characterization with Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of people who are really troubled about the way that they changed a lot of the characters and the way they're characterized in the movies. I think that a lot of the decisions they had to make, though, in terms of characterization, were justified for the movies. Some of them aren't, and we'll get into that, right? Now, first, I want to give examples of decisions that were made that are good decisions that some people might not like. So a good example of this would be Boromir, right? The way it's changed. Now, in the books, Boromir is far more of sort of a foil to Aragorn, being sort of a kingly character who's in a kingly line, who has a future in attaining more power, but who is desiring power for himself, which serves as a good foil with Aragorn, because Aragorn is someone who is a selfless leader, right? So Boromir as a foil to Aragorn, perfectly good for that story, right? Aragorn is just the example of what a good leader looks like in the books. And Boromir is the opposite, but also similar, right? Perfect foil book stuff. Don't really need to improve on that. The movie didn't seek to improve on it, but rather, in order to keep the drama and the tension in the movie, they needed to give Aragorn some sort of arc, some sort of battle, right? And the best way to do that was to make Boromir somewhat relatable, an interesting and a more three-dimensional, fleshed out character. That way, it's tragic when he passes, and that launches Aragorn forward into accepting his destiny, right? This creates tension, especially in a format that is meant to be consumed consistently, right? You have a time limit. You're there sitting there watching scenes. You got to keep up the drama. You got to keep up the tension. Whereas in a book like Lord of the Rings, you don't need tension all the time. Lord of the Rings is very good at being still as a book. It's not under pressure to keep moving and keep going. There's always something interesting happening, but it's not always tense, right? In a movie, you do need a little bit of that tension. So it was a wise decision for the movie to do it that way. Is it a better decision? What decision is better? I think they're both equally the same. I think it's kind of the same thing with Gimli and Legolas. In the books, Gimli and Legolas are far more three-dimensional and interesting characters, and their friendship grows over a long period of time, and you get to learn about these characters, and it's a very beautiful thing. And you lose that in the movies. And so a lot of people are like, that's ridiculous. They just become cardboard cutouts of who they were, and they're not even close, right? I would argue that time. You have main characters, and these are the characters you need to flesh out. You don't have the amount of time in the runtime of a film to flesh out every individual character with Legolas and Gimli, right? So how do you use those characters? It was wise for them to use them as sort of action hero / comedic relief, friendship, battling with each other in the background. That added to the tone of the film, and it cut out content that needed to sort of be cut out, because otherwise the films would just be far too long, right? So I think that's a justified decision. You could say, hey, I like their relationship better in the books because it's more fleshed out. Absolutely. But to say that it was a poor decision on the part of those who are adapting it into a film, I would disagree. I think it was a wise choice for them to do, right? So there are a lot of decisions like that done throughout the Lord of the Rings that I would say are justified decisions, but they're just different decisions. And you can take that element and say, hey, I like this element better than the way they did it over here. Personally, I would say yes, but I think both people, both Tolkien and I forget the director. I'll put the title in there. Peter Jackson. Both Peter Jackson and Tolkien made wise decisions about how they are writing in their medium, right? Both were very good at what they did. Now, let's get into some of the disagreements I would have, right? Some of the poor decisions. And there aren't that many poor decisions made. In my opinion, at least the only things that I can think of, I would say there's a decision that the movies made that is actually better than the books. And then there's a decision that the books made that I don't know why they didn't do it in the movie at all. So number one, I would say a decision that the movies made that was better than the books is Arwen, how they use Arwen. More specifically, the way they introduce Arwen. The books has Arwen, she is very much so a background character. I think maybe she's mentioned in the entire trilogy like twice. And she's sort of only there for Aragorn to be loyal to her in lieu of being with Éowyn. That's kind of the only reason Arwen exists. So she's not really a character. She's just kind of a obstacle for Aragorn to not overcome to go over to Éowyn, because Éowyn's super fleshed out in the books, but Arwen is not fleshed out in the least bit. To have like that tension, characterizing Arwen in some way would be valuable. In some way, it doesn't have to be super extensive, but in some way, it's good. I think there's some things in which the movie kind of over-characterizes Arwen, but the way she's introduced, the books, when Frodo has been stabbed and he needs to get over to Elrond's house, the person that Tolkien has in there to take him is some random elf we never hear about ever again. He never comes back. I don't even remember what his name is. He just shows up and pops out, and that's his whole purpose, was to take Frodo from where he was over to Elrond's house. Why wasn't that Arwen? It is, in my opinion, it was just an objectively better decision to bring Arwen there and to introduce her there and to characterize her there. I can't think of any reason why you wouldn't do that from a writing perspective. So I would say objectively, the movie makes a better decision there. Okay. Now let me get into something that I think the books do way better, and I can't think of any good reason why the movie didn't do this. And unfortunately, it is at the feet of Sir Christopher Lee, Saruman. Saruman in the books is one of the coolest villains of all time. I love this villain. I love the way he's characterized. I love that he's sort of this knowledgeable wizard that in his arrogance and pride has decided to take on multiple colors and just the line of white is a perfectly good color to paint upon. Ugh. What a perfect representation of like intellectualism and seeing the bedrock of what makes something pure and saying, well, you know, that's pure and nice and all that, but let's add to it, right? That's what makes intellectualism so dangerous and villainous, right? And that's what makes Saruman. He's not on Sauron's side in the book. He wants to play the long game and beat Sauron later. In the movies, Saruman is just kind of, he's not characterized like at all almost. He's just like, oh, Sauron is way too strong, he's way too powerful, we can't win, so we just might as well join him, right? Which, like, there's no nuance there. There's no, it's like, Saruman, I love Christopher Lee, I love his performance in that movie, but like, geez, man, he was, the book is fundamentally better. It makes a fundamentally better decision there. So, I, for the life of me, you could have just done that in dialogue. There wasn't more to, like, they're not cutting out things that would have taken too much time. They're not, like, there's no reason why they would have cut that out, in my opinion. If Saruman was that and he was a Saruman of many colors, man, give me the Saruman of many colors. Love that. So anyway, that's my opinions on adaptation and Lord of the Rings. Appreciate you listening. Drop a comment below, and if you feel so inclined, go ahead and donate. I have links in the description below if you feel that this video has provided value to you. And thank you for listening and watching as always. Bye.